I would like to believe that St. Paul knew the story. I'd like to believe that at some point in their lives, who knows, maybe one night after the adjournment of the evening session at the Council of Jerusalem, as Peter and Paul sat with friends and colleagues sharing experiences, moving beyond their theological and ecclesiastical differences, remembering and sharing something of their personal stories, I'd like to believe that Paul heard Peter tell this story of the day Jesus came walking by the Sea of Galilee and approached Peter and his brother Andrew and their fellow fishermen James and John, and as the gospel puts it, called them, said to them, "Follow me, and I'll make you fish for people." I'd like to believe that Peter told that story to Paul. I'd like to believe that Paul knew how Peter and Andrew and James and John left their nets and fishing boats and followed Jesus. Further, I would like to believe that Peter knew the story of Paul's call. Luke knew. He reported it in the 9th chapter of Acts, that account of Paul on the road to Damascus one day, surrounded by a light flashing from heaven and hearing a voice in his ear, that story of 3 days of blindness and of the recovery of his sight, that story of the dramatic change in the life of Paul, who went from the persecution of Christians to the proclamation of Jesus as the Son of God. I'd like to believe that these two, Peter and Paul, knew each other's story. I can't prove it, but surely they did. Late one night, early one morning, one day at lunch, in a reflective respite from the demands of leadership in the early church, surely they got to talking somewhere along the way, and each shared with the other his response to the simple question, "How did you get into this church business anyway? What got you into ministry? Tell me about your call." Now, if anything like that ever happened, I'd like to believe that that experience of sharing was in the mind of St. Paul when he gave the church these words recorded in the 4th chapter of Ephesians, written possibly from Rome, late in his life from a prison cell, reflecting on a lifetime lived since that call first came. You heard it just a few moments ago. "I therefore, the prisoner in the Lord, beg you to lead a life worthy of the calling to which you have been called." What an admonition. What a reminder. From one near the end of a life of ministry to us, some at the beginning or wherever we are along the way. It's an admonition that calls us to intentional self-awareness of the summons that has called us and the choice that we've made in response to that summons. It's a call, but it comes in the form of a plea. It has a sense of urgency. One translation says, "I beg you to lead a life worthy of the calling to which you have been called." The King James Version is dramatic. "I, therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you that ye walk worthy of the vocation wherewith ye are called. I invite you, being commissioned and ordained and received into this conference, to think with me. The rest of you can too, but I especially invite these, to think with me for a few minutes about that plea and that journey that you embark upon this morning. One of the great philosophers of the 20th century is Yogi Berra. I love Yogi Berra's philosophy. Sayings about all sorts of things are attributed to him. He wrote a book some years ago, and the title of it was, "I Really Didn't Say Everything I Said." But one of his sayings applies to you candidates this morning. When you come to a fork in the road, take it. You're at a fork in the road, and you're taking it. The question is, which fork have you taken? Almost 100 years ago, Robert Frost wrote this poem. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth, then took the other. As just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that, the passing there had warned them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day. Yet, knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh somewhere, ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. I've long loved that poem. I've long been fascinated by its title, The Road Not Taken. Have you ever reflected wistfully about the road not taken? When life comes to a crossroad, a fork, and we choose, there's a decision, there's a moving in a direction. And to make such a decision implies a commitment, the choice of a school, the choice of a church, the choice of a spouse, the choice of a life's work. In so many areas of our lives, we make choices. We come to a fork in the road and we take it. In taking one, we commit to it and we leave some other option for another day. But I wonder if you've noticed that sometimes we remain strongly attracted to the roads we leave for another day. Some persons live a lifetime having made a choice, but never fully committing to it. Some persons live with an eternal wistfulness for the road not taken. And when they do that, they never settle into the commitment made. Such a person in marriage keeps open the possibility of another spouse, a better relationship. If this road's not the right one, I've saved another for another day. Such a person in religion is ever the seeker, not in the sense of a seeker trying to plumb the depths of a religious commitment, but a seeker who stays on the fringes, ever looking for a better way, a new truth. This person hangs around the edges of the church. Such a person in vocation is ever tentative, avoiding genuine commitment to a vocation, holding out always the possibility that one has made a mistake. So I'll do this for a while until another day I'm led elsewhere. Such a person in United Methodist ministry is ever tentative in the commitment to a particular appointment, going from appointment to appointment without ever really being there, because he or she regards each one as only a stopping place on the way to somewhere else. I imagine those disciples who left their nets and boats by the Sea of Galilee that day to follow Jesus found themselves at times wistful about the road not taken. Could that wistfulness have been in Peter's mind and heart when he said on the night that Jesus was arrested, "I don't know the man"? Can't you imagine Peter wondering whether he had made a mistake, misunderstood, chosen wrongly, when he left a secure, if demanding, job, but secure, to follow an itinerant religious leader who had nowhere to lay his head? Could that wistfulness have been in Paul's mind and heart when he wrote about his own struggles of faith and life, about doing evil he knew he should not do and not doing good he knew he should do, and asking for help in the struggle? Perhaps it is inevitable that at times we are wistful about the road not taken. It's a mental game of what if? What if I had married differently? What if I had gone to a different school? What if I had grown up with different friends? What if I had chosen a different job? What if I had received a different appointment? What if I had answered a different call? There can be at times a wistfulness about the road not taken. And if we succumb to its temptations, that wistfulness and its accompanying uncertainty can lead us down destructive and dangerous paths. Most every moral failure I have ever seen in the life of a clergy person could be described as a result of wistfulness about some road not taken. But there's another way to think about Frost's poem. Though he called it The Road Not Taken, in reality it's also a poem about the road taken. I shall be telling this with a sigh somewhere, ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by. And that has made all the difference. I took the one. There's the road taken. For Peter and Paul, it was ultimately a road that required the total giving of self to the establishment of this institution we know as the church. They finally followed faithfully our Lord Christ, who at least once himself reflected wistfully on the road not taken when he prayed in the garden, "Father, if it's possible, let this cup pass from me." But in the end, he gave himself to that road he had chosen when he prayed what I've heard described as the prayer that never fails.